stream and start the meeting, and then you can start it whenever you would like after that part of the time. So,
thank you.
Just give us yeah, no problem. A couple more minutes. And if you're waiting for anybody, feel free to wait as long as you'd like for them to join.
Does anyone know how to change the view so you can see everyone's camera at the same time?
I think the organic SOP we developed in the past few months is that when people is not talking, they are encouraged to mute the microphone and to cut off their video feed, because there are 11 commissioners, so we want to avoid overwhelming the screen with Grady Bunch situation. So I think you cannot see them because they intentionally block their video feed.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, Melanie.
Hi.
You are able to join us by video. Welcome.
Wait, you can see my video?
No, I can. I think I was able to see you briefly when you first logged in. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that wasn't you.
No, I think you're right. That was me. I just turned it off. But
oh, okay.
So that means that the 3 people I can see, so right now I can only see Tom, you, and Robert. John Robert,
yeah,
sorry.
John. Hi, John.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Does that mean that those are the only 3 people with videos on?
Yeah, I can see 3 other people besides myself. Yeah. Okay, I think we have everybody. Hi, K7. Happy New Year.
Yeah, we got 1 minute.
Hello, Happy New Year.
Hello. So Melanie, are you joining us by team, or are you doing it by phone?
I have the Microsoft Teams app on my MacBook.
Oh, okay. Do you know how to access the raise your hand icon if you have any questions?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, are we starting? Are we live, Mike?
We are. We're ready to go whenever you'd like.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so let's start the show. Okay, call to order. So, Happy New Year, everyone. And this is Tiger Planning Commission's first meeting of 2021. And we're going to have a roll call first. So, Doreen, may we have roll call, please?
Yes. Acting President Hu?
Here.
Commissioner Brooke?
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Dick? Commissioner Jackson?
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Miranda?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Quinones?
Here.
Commissioner Roberts?
Here.
Commissioner Shook?
I am here.
Commissioner K7?
Here.
Commissioner Watson?
Here.
And Commissioner Whitehurst?
Here.
Thank you.
Everybody's here. Thank you, Doreen. So welcome back, commissioners. And I would also like to welcome our brand new voting member, Commissioner Shook. He was a alternate for the past couple of years, I believe, and he was appointed to a voting member last December. I also want to welcome our brand new alternate commissioners, Commissioner Dick and Commissioner Miranda. Welcome. Even though you are non-voting members, your comments and questions are just as valid as any of ours. So please speak up whenever the time arrives. So next is communication on the agenda. Does any commissioner have anything to report? Do you attend any meetings or have any communications? I see Commissioner Jackson and Commissioner Watson. Commissioner Jackson, please go ahead.
Sure. So just a quick note on the River Terrace 2.0 CAC. We met last on December 9th, which was just after the commission's last hearing. Just a quick overview. We looked at the project area, some of the very early concept ideas for the site, and then another bit that I wanted to pass along to the other commissioners is we looked at the housing needs analysis study that was used for this project. A few statistics that I thought were a little bit surprising to me. Let's see. So compared to the overall Oregon vacancy rate for housing, Tigard's vacancy rate is 1/3 of the Oregon vacancy rate. So there's very little housing vacancy in Tigard. Another one that I found very interesting, that our home values are high compared to the state, which isn't terribly surprising, but we're actually also high compared to Portland. And for households making $55,000 a year or less, 4/5 of those households are housing cost burdened. So some of those statistics I found pretty surprising.
Wow, well, thank you. Commissioner Watson?
On December 16th, the Washington Square Regional Center stakeholders met and reviewed a number of concepts, or not really concepts, reviewed some ideas and about making connections through that area that are pedestrian friendly, and also the encouraging of multifamily housing, of course. And there was a review of the sort of like, you know, they reviewed a series of different project types and their viability in terms of funding and ability to survive and pencil out, essentially, financially. And so it was a wandering conversation, but generally speaking, it seemed like parking garages, while they would alleviate, they would alleviate all of the surface parking lots, a lot of pavement and cars and not pedestrian friendly, but they don't generally pencil out in terms of projects as soon as you start adding a parking garage to a project. Instead of on-grade parking or street parking, it starts to get too expensive and doesn't work. And there was a discussion of one of my favorite ideas, which was a pedestrian crossing that would cross the 217 and connect the residential area below or south of the highway to what was essentially there's a existing wetlands that's not terribly constructible for anything else. So if that were made into a park with a trail system, and just the idea of being able to have a pedestrian crossing across the highway, a park in all intents, and then connect that into the retail area that is along Hall Boulevard, and then there's also the school in that area as well. So I thought that was a pretty interesting idea that would cater to the residents' desires for pedestrian-friendly walking paths and sidewalks, and also reinvigorate the Hall Boulevard area. Also, there was also some discussion of having a vehicular type bridge that crosses the 217 sort of on the north end of the Washington Square Mall itself, to create more of a connection across there and reduce traffic.
Oh, interesting. You may want to bring up the parking structure thing again at the public hearing. So thank you. All right, next item is consider minutes. Commissioners, do you have any question, concern, issue with the draft minutes that Doreen circulated last week, Wednesday, I believe? I see and hear none, so Doreen, I will sign it and email to you after the meeting.
Thank
All
you.
right. So let's move on to the main item of tonight's meeting, the public hearing. So we are considering proposed substantial amendment to the city center urban renewal plan. There's no case number, so I would just say it's amendment number 9 or 9th amendment. And under state law actually, any urban plan need to be forwarded to the planning commission for recommendation before presented to, in our case, city council for approval. And the general accepted practice is for us to provide input and pretty much to see if it's the urban renewal plan, in this case, the amendment number 9, conform to the city's comprehensive plan. So before I introduce Sean to present this the staff report, I would just like to go over a couple of procedural items. So the question of conflict. Does any commission member wish to declare a conflict of interest? I see none. Does any commission member wish to report any ex parte contact? Have you received any oral or written communication with anybody other than city staff regarding this matter? All right, I see and hear none. So I guess everybody visited the city center. So if any commissioner has not visited the city center, please speak up. Okay. All right, so the procedure will go as follows. First, the staff will give their staff report. The city is also the applicant, so I guess that will be the applicant's presentation. After that, we will take public testimony, and anybody who call in, please stand by. We will take your public testimony. After that, the planning commission will close the public hearing section, and we will consider a recommendation, in this case, to the city council. And Sean has provided a draft motion at the end of his memo on page 4. So we can take that motion as it is written, or however direction this meeting taking us. So I would like to introduce Sean Farley, Redevelopment Project Manager, to present the staff report. Sean, the floor is yours.
Hello, good evening, everybody. My name is Sean Farley. I'm the city's redevelopment project manager. And I'll be presenting this item tonight with Elaine Howard, who is our consultant and an urban renewal expert in Oregon. So yeah, this is not a land use action, but it is a requirement of the Oregon revised statutes 457 that when you are adopting a new urban renewal plan, or in this case, amending an existing urban renewal plan, the planning commission needs to review it, and they need to make a finding that it is consistent with Tigard's comprehensive plan, and then make a recommendation to adopt to the Tigard City Council. So, and then the City Council will have a hearing in February, and we'll talk a little bit more about process at the end. So we'll make a presentation, but feel free to stop us and ask any questions you might have, and there'll be time for discussion at the end as well. So just some background, this is our urban renewal area, one of 2 that we have in Tigard. This should have more landmarks on it, but this is, you are looking at basically downtown, Main Street, Burnham, Hall, Fanner Creek area, what we traditionally call Taggart's downtown. And that urban renewal plan has been in place since 2006. In Taggart, urban renewal plans and substantial amendments need to be approved by the voters. So it was approved in 2006. And we also did a substantial amendment back in 2017 that added some acreage. And that also had to be approved by the voters. So what we're requesting in this amendment is to increase the maximum indebtedness of the area by $20.8 million. And that's going to allow us to do additional projects. And the total maximum indebtedness would then be $42.8 million. And new debt could be issued till 2036. So, you know, $42.8 million, that's still considered pretty modest for the Portland region's urban renewal districts. But you know, this additional money will enable us to do some more projects, and we'll talk about the specifics in a minute. But first, I'm going to turn things over to Elaine, and we're going to give everybody a crash course in urban renewal, how it works, and take it away, Elaine.
Thank you. You can see my little animation going already. So in Oregon, we all who own property pay property taxes, and those property taxes, the revenue goes to all of the regular taxing jurisdictions. Those taxing jurisdictions are the city, the county, the school district, the metro, the port. Those usually go up by about 3% a year. That's what the statutory limitation is on property tax increases, unless there are substantial improvements to a property or there's new construction. In that case, they can go up more than that 3%. Next slide. When an urban renewal area is formed in a city, the assessor, the county assessor, will establish the frozen base assessed value of that urban renewal area. That frozen base assessed value is simply the total assessed value of all property within the area. Sometimes that word frozen base gets people really confused because they think that means property taxes are frozen or they don't have to pay property taxes anymore. It doesn't mean that at all. It just means that the assessor establishes a value at the time the area is established, and all of the regular taxing jurisdictions continue getting their taxes off that value. Next slide. But any increase in assessed value within that area goes to the urban renewal agency. The taxes off that increased value in the urban renewal area from the time it's established then go to the urban renewal agency to be able to spend on projects, programs, and administration. Within that context, every urban renewal area has to establish a maximum indebtedness. And as, excuse me, as Sean said, the amendment before you is to increase that maximum indebtedness. So it increases the total amount of money the urban renewal agency has to be able to spend within that area. Next slide. This just shows that in a different way. Some people see it differently. So this just shows the frozen base initially of an urban renewal area. And typically when an area is established, there are depressed conditions that are making it so the assessed values are not increasing. That frozen base stays the same over the full length of the urban renewal area. And that blue increment is the increased assessed value in the area, and the taxes off of that is called increment, and that's why it's called tax increment financing, because you're using that increment to fund projects within the urban renewal area. At the time the area completes and the area expires, then any increased assessed value from the frozen base then goes back to the regular taxing rules and is used by all of the different taxing jurisdictions. The one thing to remember about urban renewal is that your local school district and the education service district are funded on a per pupil basis. So although urban renewal is a direct impact on the city's budget or in the county's budget and the fire district's budget, it is an indirect impact on schools and the ESD because they are funded on a per pupil basis through the state school fund. Next slide.
Thanks, Elaine. So now I'm going to talk about some of the specific successes that we've had in the Tigard City Center Urban Renewal District since 2006. There's been about $40.8 million in private investment on new construction and property improvements. And looking back at the records, that's about 3 times the amount of investment in the 12 years preceding urban renewal. There's been a 64% increase in assessed value during the life of the district. And compare that to a 56% increase assessed value citywide. We've made 28 matching grants for building improvements to downtown businesses. And those matching grants have leveraged $2.60 for every $1 of public investment. So $2.60 of private investment to $1 of public investment. There's been 234 new apartments constructed. And that's a 32% increase in housing in the urban renewal area. That's compared to 12% increase in the rest of Tigard. So here's some projects you might be familiar with. Atwell off Main was a public-private partnership that redeveloped the city's public works yard into a mixed-use building with 165 units. Really helped invigorate the area around it. As you can see, the neighboring building, once this building went in, decided to add a couple new stories to their building. So one success is breeding another. Main Street and Burnham Street improvements have been done partially with urban renewal. We'll be doing the last section of Main Street later this year to complete the improvements of pedestrian safety, new lighting, wider sidewalks, and green street features that deal with the pollutants that run off roads. Tigard Street Heritage Trail and Rotary Plaza were partially funded by urban renewal. So hopefully you've explored that. It's a great path to get you places, and also to learn about the history and culture of the different peoples who have lived in Tigard. And here's a bunch of additional projects. We've done some other streetscape improvements, constructed a surface parking lot, and done some improvements to Fanner Creek Trail. So a couple projects that are in the works now. You may have noticed a large empty parcel on Main Street. It's been that way for about 3 or 4 years. We have a development agreement with a developer to build a 4-story mixed-use building, and that should be happening later this year. So it'll be a nice addition to Main Street with apartments on top and retail on the bottom. Ava Roasteria, the cafe, will be building that. And then we have the Universal Plaza. Currently on the site, we have some temporary improvements. I hope you've had a chance to go down there and visit it. It's going to get pretty exciting there soon. We have a large temporary piece of art and these really cool twinkle trees. We're currently designing the permanent plaza, and that should be going to construction in 2022. So with the additional funds from the substantial amendment, that is going to go to support projects such as constructing new streets. We have a downtown connectivity plan, and to build these new streets takes money. So that will help construct that new street network, which will make it easier for pedestrians to get around and open up new properties for development. There is a project to continue the Tigard Heritage Trail south from Main Street to Hall Boulevard to hook up with an existing pedestrian trail. some Fano Creek Trail improvements. The Universal Plaza I mentioned, there's going to be a phase 2 of that. That will build some shade structures, a community room, and some final features. A shared parking structure. Important as parking gets tighter downtown, that'll be able to be shared with a potential new civic center, city facilities that may be built on the Public Works Building and Burnham Hall. We would support affordable housing and mixed-use development with grants and other grants and technical assistance. And then pedestrian safety and streetscape improvements. And finally, land acquisition. Agency would acquire land to help redevelop certain parcels. So the process and timeline. The Tigard CAC has recommended approval of this, and that went to the TCDA board, the Development Agency Board, and that is City Council when they wear their urban renewal hat. And now we're at January 4th, the Tigard Planning Commission considering, and then there has to be some resolutions by taxing districts, Washington County, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, and the school district. And then there will be a city council hearing on February 9th, and notice of that will be mailed to every Tigard household. And then in May 18th, a ballot measure will go to the Tigard voters. Elaine, you want to take this?
Sure. So when we're looking at a comprehensive plan and how it relates to the urban renewal plan, especially on amendments, it's a difficult process, and I appreciate Commissioner Jackson's edits to our document. What we do is go back and look at both the existing urban renewal plan, and then we look at the comprehensive plan, and we compare those to the projects that are being proposed. So some of the findings remain the same within the urban renewal plan. Some of them are added a little bit, and sometimes we see where maybe an area, for example, the parks, recreation, trails, and open space needs to be added in totality to the amendment. So in the existing urban renewal plan, there are some findings already for natural resources and historic areas, economic development, housing, transportation, special planning areas downtown. And then we added parks, recreation, trails, and open space, and we added that both from the findings in the comprehensive plan, but also in the parks master plan, and they're a little different. So it makes it confusing when you're looking at the amendment to try to figure out what that means, but it just means there are two separate documents, and we reviewed them both and tried to incorporate information on them both. We also added in some language on some of those other project areas just to make sure we covered all projects that were being proposed. When this actually gets transformed into the existing urban renewal plan, we'll be formatting it to match the urban renewal plan. So the formatting that is in this amendment is, I went through and changed some of it to try to match it, but the actual formatting will match to the existing urban renewal plan when fully incorporated. We also looked at the transportation system plan, the Tigard's, again, Parks System Master Plan. The affordable housing plan was new since the last amendment, and the Tigard strategic plan was new. So we looked at all of those other city documents and made the findings just to say that the projects being proposed are in line with what is in those existing documents. And they don't have to be in line with every part of that document, but in line with parts of those documents that directly relate to the projects that you're doing. So there's no real art to doing these kinds of findings. They're different from the kinds of findings that you have to review for development projects, but they are the kinds of findings I've done for the last 16 years, urban renewal consulting across the state. And this is consistent with the kinds of findings that are in urban renewal plans. Next slide. As your chair said, this is just a recommendation on a motion. The key word for me is the word conforms, because that's the word that's in the statute. So you can have your discussion and decide to change anything if you decide to find that it conforms. The thing that I'm most concerned about is that you actually use that word conform instead of complies with, or is in concert with, or other language. If you use that conform language, that for me is what's important, because that's what's in the statute. And both Sean and I will be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Elaine and Sean. Commissioners, it's your time to ask questions. Anybody? Don't be shy. Okay, oh, we have Commissioner Roberts and Commissioner Jackson. Commissioner Roberts, go ahead. I think you are in mute, John.
Thank you.
Yep.
Now the question, just a quick comment. I found it really interesting to learn about how the funds flow from what sources into what uses. And I would imagine that the average person has no idea how this operates. So this might be a great opportunity to educate people with something in the city newsletter or Tiger Times or something like that. That was really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we are planning more education, including a short video. So look for that very soon.
All right, Commissioner Jackson, thank you for your previous feedback. Go ahead.
Sure. So I had a question. There are a couple projects along haul that I'm aware of. So there's the consolidated city facilities we're going to hear about later tonight. And I've also heard some talk that at the state level, the new rep-elect is going to push for Hall to be pulled under city control. And I was just curious to what extent, whether or not those projects happen, how much does that affect the projections and costs in the urban renewal district?
So the urban renewal funding would partially fund a parking structure that would be used by the city facilities, but it'd also be available for use for visitors for downtown, people visiting Universal Plaza, for example, or just customers or other employees downtown. So urban renewal won't directly fund that. One of the reasons for doing this, and you'll be learning more about this later, for doing the city facilities is that it's going to open up the existing civic center to private redevelopment and affordable housing. And so when we did the financial projections for that, we did take that into consideration, how that would affect the TIF coming in.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Craig, Commissioner Shirk, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I too enjoyed the explanation of tax increment financing. I did a little bit of reading on that, but I was hoping you were going to explain that, so thank you very much. Is this plan, or is this amendment, is it a commitment to do the specific projects that you have listed, or are those ideas or proposed projects?
Well, it's a list of projects, and we may not be able to fund all of them, but our intention is to do as many of them as we can within the available funds. A lot of these projects are done not just with tax increment financing, they're done with grants. We've been successful getting grants to help kickstart some of these projects, including grants from Metro and from the EPA. So yeah, we are going to do as many of those projects as we can, but without the amendment, we're not going to be able to do those new projects, and we're not going to be able to do some of the ones that are in the the plan right now.
Right, I see. So it's not a specific commitment, but a desire kind of, and things that you have highlighted as targets, right?
I'd say it's more than a target. I mean, these are real projects that we want to do. We just don't. We may not be able to fund all of them just because.
That's right. Yeah.
Some of
Who
them
knows
are
how much it's
very
going to cost
expensive.
later.
Right.
Yeah. As it relates to the roads or the streets that are going through, are there existing right-of-ways in those areas, or how do you go about acquiring all those streets? Or are they already part of the city?
Yeah, I mean that's a difficult question. That's what makes building new streets difficult. But typically, when there's new development, they are required to build these new streets, and that we've already seen one leg of that. Well, we've done two legs. One was publicly funded, the Ash Street connection from Burnham to the Park and Ride, but the privately built one was the Atwell. Atwell is 2 buildings, and there's a short street that will eventually connect through to Hall when all those other properties redevelop.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
There were pre-existing easements for those streets, or were they newly designed according to the projects that came through?
Yeah, they're new. There's no easements, so
Okay.
This amendment would enable us to partially fund some of those streets because they can be expensive. So there could be some public funding of some of those legs of those streets, or we could take the initiative and acquire a right of way to and build the streets. But typically in Tigard, the way we do it is development bears the cost of frontage improvements and new streets.
Sense. I have a question about the garage.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a public garage that's owned. Is that going to be owned by the city of Tigard after it's funded and built?
It's my understanding. The next presentation you might
Get more information.
Yeah, but
okay.
my understanding is that it would be publicly owned and operated.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry, Commissioner Watson. This is Tom McGuire. I wanted to jump in because I wanted to finish up just one minor point on your last question, and that is we have adopted in the downtown plan district a street plan. So we know where we want the streets to go, even in the areas where we don't already have right-of-way or easements or anything, but we have an adopted plan that has lines on the map that tells us where those streets and connections should happen as development occurs there. So
okay.
I just wanted to make sure the commission was aware of that.
Thank you. Okay, well, I won't put you on the spot on the garage any further. I just, I have interest in it in terms of the Washington Square regional planning. But maybe we talk about it later. It's all good.
Okay. Next, I see Commissioner Kinos. Ali, you have a question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Actually, I have 2 questions. So that's a good, Jamie, I don't know if this is where you were leading to too, but I'll ask it. Is the shared parking structure taking into consideration the potential TriMet expansion? And then my second question was, there was a slide that mentioned that private investment was 3 times more than the previous urban renewal projects. And I was wondering, will the private investment continue to be a focus? And how does that interact with any of the tax calculations?
I'll take the second part of your question first. Yeah, I mean, the urban renewal funding is kind of like seed funding to get more private investment, and that private investment generates more tax increment that enables us to do more projects. So it's kind of a virtuous cycle that we want to encourage more redevelopment so we can generate more increment and do more projects. And then at the end of the district district's life, then all that increased property tax will go to the taxing jurisdictions who have foregone some of that money for a period of time. So as to the parking structure, I think, yeah, I would defer that question till to Kenny and Nadine's. What was your specific question again? I'm sorry, I forget about the parking.
Sure.
structure.
No, it was if the shared parking structure is going to take into consideration the TriMet expansion in terms of like number of parking spots, the people going in and out, because you mentioned it would be shared with the city, it would be shared with other people visiting Tigard. So if there were going to be maybe spots that would be assigned for TriMet only, or I don't know, just other ideas.
Yeah, there are parking structures that are like that. I don't believe that that's in the cards for this, but again, I think that might be a better question for the next presentation, which will have more details about that.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Commissioner Dick, Darlene.
Hi, I want to go back to when there's no easement for the new roads in your projects. How do you acquire your right-of-way from the property owners? Is that a purchase? Do you just decide to divide up their property? How does that work?
Yeah, so as Tom mentioned, we have a plan that has located several new streets on existing properties, and the goal here is to increase connectivity. There's very big blocks in the downtown. It's not, it's walkable in terms of there being sidewalks, but having big blocks really makes it hard to get around. So these new streets will break down the size of the blocks. It also creates value for the property, because if you have a long interior lot with no street frontage, it's generally not as valuable as one that has street frontage. So typically what happens is that, it happens one of two ways. Either the city or the locality will purchase the right-of-way and build the street, or the other way it happens is that when a property redevelops significantly, completely builds new buildings and everything, that if there is a new street on the plan on that property, then they are required to build that. And this urban renewal funding can help defray the costs of building those streets in those cases. Well, in both cases, it could fund the street for when the city, decides to build the street outright, or it could, help partner with the private developer who is, building that street as part of their new development.
So can I ask a secondary question to your response? So who determines the value of the property that you when you purchase the right-of-way? And do you find that it often conflicts with the homeowners or the property owners' vision of what they were going to do with that property?
Well, in cases where right-of-way is purchased, there is an appraisal and a whole process around that, where we pay the fair market value for the property.
Okay. Are you done, darling? Okay, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So Sean, I have 3 quick questions and maybe comments. So I'm following up on Commissioner Watson and Kino's comment on parking structure. I know that it's difficult to pinpoint how that's going to be like at this point, but part of the Tiger Comprehensive Plan has a section on energy conservation, and one of the goals and principle is to reduce car traffic. So I just wish there's some discussion how I believe the parking structure is brand new for this Ninth Amendment. So I wish there's more of a discussion of how construction of a parking structure is still consistent with the Tiger Comprehensive Plan of Energy Conservation in terms of reducing car traffic, and maybe even bring out. Maybe it's difficult to do at this point, but maybe tying on alternative energy like solar panels or EV car charging stations, or even rain collection for bathroom or irrigation. So, because back when this urban renewal plan was introduced in 2005 to the Planning Commission, energy conservation was discussed, and so I'm a little, I won't say surprised, but I just wish there's this energy conservation section to discuss this brand new parking structure, and even Universal Plaza, because we're going to be building public structure on it, so there's an opportunity for alternative energy to be introduced. So that's just my comment. I don't know if you want to respond to that or.
Sure. No.
You don't have to.
No, I like all your ideas about harnessing alternative energy ideas, and I think those will be better design. We have not gotten into design, I know that much, but again, it might be a better question for the next presentation.
Right.
But I do hear you about not wanting to generate additional traffic. I think this parking structure is not going to be overbuilt. It's just basically going to accommodate just enough traffic, and basically turning what is now surface parking lots in our current civic center, and just having those spaces in a structure. They are, structures are expensive, as has been mentioned, but it also frees up all that surface parking to new housing and affordable housing. So we think in certain cases, structured parking is definitely warranted. And
right.
But I do want to, we're not intending on building more spaces than we need. We're going to build enough, to meet the demand. And it's kind of good sharing, because Universal Plaza will, demand will be, nights and weekends, when most city employees will not be there. So that'll be a good sharing situation, kind of ideal.
Yeah, I think my overall point is maybe a little bit more discussion of energy conservation, because there are a lot of other things you are doing, like more trails, make this urban village where people work and live closer together. They will achieve the energy conservation goal in our Tiger Comprehensive Plan. But I just wish this document will flaunt it a little bit more, and maybe make the voter more proud of the city's conservation goal. I have two more questions, Commissioner Watson. I noticed that this amendment proposed to delete figure 5, 6, and 7. I found them to be pretty helpful to pinpoint all the projects. So why are you proposing to delete them?
Well, in those cases, they weren't actually where the projects ended up being built. There's like when those maps were first done in 2005, it was kind of guessing where some things would be,
right.
And and it's not always a great idea to specifically say like where you want to build a plaza, because then if you're on that property, then that property owner is going to hold out for a lot of money.
Yeah. Okay. And but you do list a list of acquired land. So maybe instead of those figures, maybe there will be a figure of acquired land. Maybe that will be helpful. That's just something to consider. Also, one more quick point is that I went to the city's website to look at the current project on the city center urban renewal plan, and there are a few broken links on the website. So I suspect that before the May election, a lot more Tiger residents will want to go to the website. So it might be a time to refresh those websites to fix those broken links. Okay, thank you,
Yes.
Commissioner Watson.
Thank you for pointing that out. We'll check out those broken links, and we are intending to put a lot more information about the projects and the amendment.
Thank you.
So I just briefly wanted to respond actually to Commissioner Hu's comments in regards to the garage and parking or energy conservation. So if you take the same amount of cars that were on a surface parking lot and you build a parking garage that is 4 stories tall, then you're basically reducing the amount of surface parking, maintaining the same amount of parking, but also freeing that land for new developments. And in that sense, it meets the goals of density. And density also helps the area become more walkable for pedestrians, because you can have more uses in a smaller area. You can house more people in that area instead of having, parking, surface parking lots and all of that sort of thing. And surface parking lots are generally not that pedestrian friendly anyway. And there's also the heat island effect that large areas of asphalt causes, which raises temperatures, and there's a number of reasons why. Parking, encouraging parking is not great, but it accomplishes a lot of other things that are beneficial to the environment and to the people who live there.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'm not expert in the area, but my point, I wish there's a little bit more discussion, energy discussion. So any commissioner have any more questions? Okay, I see none. Michael, Eric, do we have public comments?
President Hu, at this time, we do not have any public comments or calls.
Okay, great. So I'm going to close the public hearing section of this area and move on to deliberations. Commissioners, what do you think? Do you think this Urban Renewal Amendment number 9, what's the magic word, conforms to the City of Tiger Comprehensive Plan and other local goals and objections? Come on, the City Council is waiting to hear from us. Do I have to call on each one of you?
I think it does. I think this is what's needed, and it's awesome. Thank you.
Great. How about Commissioner Dick, Darlene? What do you think?
I concur.
Okay.
I think it meets it. I did have one stray little question about the lights of the Heritage Trail going through downtown, because I know they were omitted on the original piece coming right into downtown, and I was hoping you would add lights in that as you move forward with this.
Thank you. Commissioner, another alternate, Commissioner Miranda Ashar, what do you think?
Looks good. Of course, I too am excited about parking structures and have lots of questions and ideas, but I'll try and hold my tongue. I like the document as is.
Okay, good. And I see Commissioner K7 want to talk.
Hey, hi. Yeah, I just want to say I think this is cool that we are doing this. It feels like we're a little late. We should have done it sooner, but I'm glad you're doing it. We need to take Tiger ahead and move forward. It'll be great to be part of this vibrant community. Thank you for doing this.
Great. Commissioner Brooks, what do you think?
Like everyone else, I think it's a great plan. But I also have lingering questions about, with the TriMet expansion, just making sure that we have adequate parking, because as someone like Jamie, we were both commuting downtown, and trying to find parking to get on that bus is so dang hard. So, I mean, I'll always put in a plug for extra parking, especially if we're encouraging people to get on transit. So, those are my only thoughts. But overall, the plan looks really good, and it seems pretty well thought out. So, really grateful for your work on that.
Thank you. Commissioner Jackson, Nate, what do you think?
Yeah, my thoughts are generally in alignment with everyone else's as far as it conforming. I think a lot of the specific projects that are discussed in the plan are pretty exciting. As I mentioned, some of my concerns are more on the side of, okay, how does this link into other projects in the area? Is that going to affect costs? And like just contingencies if the projections, if the economic conditions change wildly or something, and we need to adjust, like just being aware of what those contingencies are. But overall, I think it's very exciting.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Kinos, Allie, what do you think?
Yes, I am excited for the Universal Plaza. I currently I live right behind Phantom Creek Trails and the Burnham Street access, and I love that. We would walk over there all the time. I actually miss having the farmers market there because it was a lot, I mean, in terms of streets and car safety, and I have 2 little boys, it was a lot safer over there than where it currently is. So I would love to see the Universal Plaza, the covered structures. So I'm very excited. Yes, yay.
Great. And Commissioner Shook, Craig?
I like the project also. I think it's kind of when your last name is S, you just end up repeating everything that everybody else said in front of you. But I think it's a really good idea for that area, especially for some of those open spaces. And it's the whole idea of tax increment financing is a new one for me, being the new guy on the commission. And so I was skeptical of how that works. And so it was really nice to hear how that public-private kind of partnership thing can really work to benefit both. And so I would support it as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Commissioner Watson, any last comment?
I find it to be conforming in its intent.
Very precise. All right, Commissioner Whitehurst, Cole, what do you think?
Yeah, I as well am really excited about this plan. I really appreciate seeing the affordable housing piece, and thank you everyone for your thoughtful input.
All right, Commissioner Roberts, do you have one more
Yes,
thought?
I wanted to add one more thought. I was just, it was wonderful at the beginning, but more specifically, the connectivity improvement I think will really help a lot. I mean, yes, the parking, yes, covered spaces, but instead of having these long blocks where you can't get back and forth between them, I think the connectivity will really help a lot. Thank you.
I think that's all the commissioners. I'm very excited as well for all the new developments. I moved to Tiger about 10 days after the voters approved the original urban renewal plan in 2006, and since then I've been very excited to see all the new project that's been done to the downtown area. Well, perhaps we like the old dog park better because it's bigger, but I understand apartment is more important than dog parks. So, but overall, I think it conforms to our local goals. But just as I mentioned, I just wish the document were broadcast our energy conservation goals and aspiration a little bit better. Like, even all those projects for trails and urban village things, they are all contributing to energy conservation, but we didn't mention that in this document. I just think that's a shame. So but overall, I think it's a great amendment, and I support it. Okay, so commissioners, does anybody want to make a motion?
But we don't really have a numbered. Normally you've got like we recommend that the city council approve, and then there's this numbered zoning change or whatever after it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't think we have that numbered reference at this point.
Well, the suggested motion on
So
page
just-
number 4, it says amendment number 9.
Okay.
That's pretty much.
There it is. Okay, thanks. I was looking further up. So, in that case, I'd like to move that we recommend to the City Council that they approve amendment number 9 to the plan. Is that precise?
Well, we as I think as Elaine mentioned, the word conform to Tiger Comprehensive Plan is a key thing. So the motion should have 2 parts.
Okay.
So do you have the actual motion in front of you?
I have it in front of me on one of my screens.
Okay.
No, what I have is the plan with the double underline and the strike throughs and that.
Do you mind if other commissioner give a go?
Not at all. Go for it.
Okay. Commissioner Watson, looks like you are ready.
No, I was gonna pounce on seconding because I don't have it in front of me either. Oh, there it is. I can say.
Oh, there you go. Thank you, Sean.
Yay. Thank you. Okay, I'll do it.
Okay.
I move that the Tigard Planning Commission finds, based upon the information provided in the staff report and the provided attachments, that the City Center Urban Renewal Plan amendment conforms with the Tigard Comprehensive Plan, and further recommend that the Tigard City Council adopt the proposed plan amendment.
So there we are moving that the Tiger Planning Commission find that the amendment number 9 to the Urban Renewal Plan conform with the Tiger Comprehensive Plan, and further recommend that the Tiger City Council adopt the proposed plan amendment. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Commissioner Roberts, second. All those in favor, please unmute your microphone. All those in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Those opposed? None. Okay, so I think it passed unanimously. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Elaine.
Thank you very much.
And I guess I'm supposed to mention that the City Council again is having this hearing on February 9th. Is that right, Sean?
That's right. And
Okay.
you'll be getting a postcard in the mail, and there'll be more information on our websites and Facebook pages and Twitter and all that as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are a little bit behind, but let's keep on going. So next item on the agenda will be a briefing on the city facilities consolidation. And listed presenters are Kenny Asher, Community Development Director, Nadine Robertson, Central Services Director. Kenny and Nadine, the floor is yours.
And
thank
Kenny and
you so
Nadine,
much.
this is Mike. I'm just dropping the call-in portion of it, so you might hear a few awkward words as our call-in service drops out of here.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, Mike.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, Mike. And I just want to make sure that Kirsten Hauge is also here. I'm sure she is, but she's another presenter, maybe not on your crib sheet.
Hi, Kenny. This is Kirsten. I'm
hello.
here, and hopefully you're seeing the presentation on screen.
Yeah, are you controlling it, or is Mike?
I am, if that's okay.
Can you just knock it down just so I have a chance to say hello and just give the briefest of introductions, and then we can pull it back up? Thank you. So I just wanted to say hi and introduce myself and my teammates. I'm Kenny Asher. I'm the city's Community Development Director and have been at it with Tom and Doreen and Sean and some of your other friends for the last 8 or 9 years. And I was sitting in on the last conversation and am prepared to share with you and talk to you about the parking structure. Maybe that's going to be the big topic of discussion, but you know, I guess what I wanted to say in the way of an overview is that the City Center Tax Increment Financing District has been successful and will be even more successful if this amendment is sent to the voters and approved. And that's what we're hoping for. And it is exciting to think about all of the projects that could come online over the next, 15 or 20 or 25 years. They're all important, but this project that you're going to hear about now is hoped to come online in the next 4 years, and is probably the most transformational of all of them. And we are really excited to present it to you. It's still in the feasibility stage. We are going to be asking council to continue to the third and final feasibility stage phase in a couple of weeks. We're in the process now of sharing what we've learned and what we want to do as a city staff, as an executive team, with all of the boards and committees. I know that this is kind of an unusual meeting for the Planning Commission. This is not a land use case either, but the Planning Commission, I think, is a very special audience for this concept. And I think you'll be able to tell immediately why it is so important that your board weigh in on it and hopefully support it, or tell us how we can gain your support. So I'm joined by Nadine Robinson, my colleague who runs central services for the city of Tigard, including our facilities, and Kirsten Hage from Kearns & West. It's a communications consulting firm. And the three of us are going to present these slides to you, and then hopefully we can have time for some discussion after we're through. I think the presentation takes about 15 or 20 minutes if we're moving it along. And I believe that Nadine is going to kick us off. Do I have that right, Nadine?
Well, actually, Kirsten is, but she's just got a slide or two, and then I'll jump right into it.
Okay. All right. So great to be here. And go ahead, Kirsten.
Great. Thanks so much for that introduction, Kenny. And thanks, everyone, for inviting us to be here tonight. So for today's presentation, we're excited to share more with you about the City Facilities Consolidation Project, or CFC project. We'll share a little bit about the project overview, the need and purpose for the project, and as Kenny mentioned, some of the potential opportunities that are posed by this project and why we're proposing taking action now, and then an overview of next steps moving forward. And then I'll share some information about community engagement, both activities to date as well as upcoming ways to get involved. And then save a little bit of time at the end for your questions and discussion. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Nadine.
Thanks, Kirsten. So first, you see it called the CFC project, and that stands for City Facilities Consolidation. That is not going to be the long-term name of it. It's just the one that we're using today until we figure out something that really resonates with people. But just to give you a little bit of an introduction to the project, the city's been growing over, this building's been here over 30 years now. So, and those of you who are longer-term residents, you know how much the city has grown. And so as part of that, we're having to figure out how to best invest in our infrastructure, and that includes our buildings. And we have a strategic plan that we're using that's been in place for 5 years and was recently updated, that basically says Tigard wants to be more walkable, more inclusive, healthier for all. And so we're looking at our investments in a way that promotes those goals. And to that end, we're testing the feasibility for a building that would house most of the city's public services. Next slide, please. So this project would relocate Tigard Public Works operations out of the downtown and use their public work site, which is at Hall and Burnham, the nice brick building. But that really, if you look closely, there's a whole operations yard that goes with that. So we would be looking at moving that to a more appropriate location and using that site to put in a multi-story building that would have an expanded city hall and a police station. As you heard about in the last presentation, it would provide more parking, and we would be able to have more housing in the downtown, which would really be a benefit. We would also potentially relocate and enhance the current skate park. So we've been working on this project for quite a while. It's been over 1.5 years now, and the first part of the project really was looking at, we had 2 departments who were independently deciding where their offices should be. And we saw this opportunity to look at it, you know, as a bigger project and something that would have a lot more benefit. And we took that project in front of council in February of last year, and council liked the concept and said, hey, keep going with it. Let's see if this is really feasible. So we're currently in phase 2, and that includes determining the size of the building that would be needed, and also developing a financial assessment that would compare the economic cost of remaining in the current facilities over a 20-year period to actually building a new facility. And that presentation is going back to council on January 19th. And we hope at that time to get another green light to keep moving it forward. And if we get that, we're going to go into phase 3, which is really taking this project out to the community, asking for their input, garnering support, and then we'll be going back to council in May to see if they will consider putting on a general obligation bond that would replace the current bonds that the city has out. Next slide, please. So I know a lot of people are asking, why is this project necessary? If you drive by the city facilities, they look good, you know, for the most part. But what you don't see are some of the costly repairs or replacements that need to be made. And so we have, just because of the age of the buildings, we have things like the HVAC system, the roof of the city hall, and the police. They're just aging out. They're going to need to be replaced. We also have some sewer connections that were put in, again, 30 years plus ago, that are starting to fail, and be really expensive to try and replace those systems. I think equally important is that our facilities don't meet the current seismic standards. If we had a earthquake, there could be a significant life safety hazard to the people in the buildings and our ability to respond. So it would, I shouldn't say would, it could, depending on the size of the earthquake, severely impact the city's ability to manage recovery operations after an event. Next slide, please. So we're looking for the best solution. We've been working with a consultant to decide whether to replace these buildings individually, to replace them now, to look at doing that later. And based on the findings from our consultant, they really believe that over time, there's going to be a significant savings to Tigard residents when you account for the additional revenue from the sale and redevelopment of the properties and the value of the new facilities. The net cost to the city for constructing these new facilities is probably in the neighborhood of $123 million. But when you compare that to what could be up to $200 million to maintain our current buildings, again, over that same period of time, it's actually less expensive for us to look at building new buildings. All right, project funding. So this is actually pretty exciting. The project can be funded without raising property taxes or the property tax rate. So voters would be asked to approve an extension of the current property tax rate, and that could possibly happen in November of 2021. But the additional financing would be provided through a combination of sources the city has. That would be things like utility rate increases, special revenue funds, photo enforcement revenues, tax increment financing, and then, of course, the land sale proceeds. Next slide, please. I know in the age of COVID, a lot of people are asking why now. And one thing I think that the pandemic has really shown us is the importance of being there for our residents. You know, when things are not going well for them, they look to the city for reassurance, and we need to be able to respond, especially if we had some kind of seismic event, and we want to be there for our community and be able to be the responders that they need us to be. We also know that by taking action now, we'd be able to take advantage of lower construction costs and avoid the ongoing repairs for our current facilities. Plus, residents would see that cost savings. Again, if we replace without, we can do this replacement without raising property taxes if we're able to complete it by 2025. So I'm going to let Kenny talk about what the potential opportunities are.
Thanks, Nadine. You know, I think the presentation starts with the most important part of the project, which is that the city needs to invest in facilities. I'm not going to say new facilities because we can invest in our existing facilities, but at a certain point, that would be like throwing good money after bad, because no matter what we put into the existing facilities, they are going to wear out. And as you know, maybe you own a home, or maybe you have other awareness of kind of just how property works. You know, buildings and systems wear out, and these systems and buildings are already 30 years old. And so this really begins with, where is the smart money? And if we just talk about the most pragmatic part of this project, we can solve a lot of problems we have with our backlog of maintenance and capital costs by building new. We're also out of space, especially in our police department. There are a number of just facility issues that we can fix by doing this project, but that's not all. And as the community development director, unlike Nadine, I don't have to worry about the budget allocation every year for roofs and sewer replacements. What I'm worried about is downtown. And we can go to the next slide. You know, the city of Tigard is the largest landowner in this downtown. We own 13.5 acres. We're using it incredibly irresponsibly, I would say, in 2021. We're a sprawled out, single-story, low-density, auto-oriented use. We are hosting a maintenance yard, for crying out loud, right in the middle of our downtown, for materials to be stored and behind a locked gate with lots of trucks. We are not leading by example, but what we are is land rich. We have all of this land, we're just not using it very well. If we can pull off this project, we think we see the potential for up to 500 new apartments. I'm going to switch to a different audio. Thanks, Tom. 1 second.
Nadine, can you give me a thumbs up, Nadine, if you can hear me, because I can see you.
Yeah, I can hear you, Kenny. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I was saying is that we're very land wealthy down here. We own a lot of land. We're not using it very well. If we can shrink the footprint of the city buildings and parking, we would have plenty of room for new apartments. New apartments would stimulate other development, especially in the Burnham corridor, shopping, dining, more housing. And though, if we can get this end of downtown going, since we already feel really good about what's happening on Main Street, you can imagine the whole downtown really taking off. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. The building itself, the buildings themselves, I should say, would bring community benefits as well, a meeting space in the new building. And oh, I should mention, we're designing to LEED Gold and net zero ready standards, we hope. So if we get back to this energy conservation discussion and our comprehensive plan goals around energy and environment, this project would be incredibly helpful as compared to what we're in now. The parking structure, we can talk more about it. It's obviously a more efficient use of our land than what we're doing now, and we would be designing it for conversion in, I don't know how many years. I'm gonna guess somewhere in the 40 to 50 year range to a different use, so that the structure could be reused to make a different kind of building there. And of course, we're a tax exempt use. So all of this 13.5 acres is not contributing to the tax increment financing that you just heard about. But in this new scenario, not all of the new housing, most of the new housing and development would help our tax increment financing. And then when the TIF district was shut down, it would help all of the taxing jurisdictions. So there are a lot of community benefits here that have nothing to do really with the facilities themselves, or I should say the facility problems that we have today. Just to go back to some of the earlier points that Nadine was making, I don't know that people have any idea that our emergency operations center is in a building that has been rated seismically unsound, which means that if the event happens, we are the place from which we're supposed to be serving the city, keeping our residents safe, keeping the streets clear, getting our police out to respond to needs, would itself be probably collapsed. So the Public Works building itself is rated very poorly for its seismic resiliency. It's actually the worst of the buildings. And the police department is, I'm going to just say, it's really kind of a disgrace for a city like Tigard. Some of you may know this, others of you may not, but our Tigard Police Department is a converted building that was originally built as, well, I'm not sure if the use was police originally, Nadine, but it was built for about 36 people. And we now have about 4 times or 5 times that many staff using that building. We can get into this more if you have questions, but suffice it to say that our police chief has a challenge on her hands recruiting and retaining the best police officers. When some of them don't have lockers to use, don't have locker rooms, and don't have a place to store and store evidence, write reports, the whole thing. So we have a space crunch there and a really inadequate police facility. And the police were one of the departments that were off trying to replace their building kind of on their own, which is one way to go, but we would lose all these other benefits that we've been talking about. Next slide. So the looming question really over all of these, over the project, because it really is hard to argue the benefits of the project. There are many. The real question is the cost. And so the looming question is, can the city afford it? It's a very expensive undertaking. It turns out, as Nadine referenced, over 20 years, this actually is the lowest cost approach. It obviously is a better urban design solution. It makes better use of the land. It creates more revenues and more development. But this is one of those things where if we can find a way to come up to kind of assemble the capital to do it over the next couple of years, it will pay off over decades. And the reasons for that, again, have to do with lower cost of maintenance, not having to lease additional space as we grow. Leasing space is very expensive if you can find space at all. And collecting taxes and collecting land sale proceeds, all of that adds up. And at the end of 20 years, these buildings will be 20 years old. The buildings we're in now will be 50 years old and will probably be pretty much at the end of their economic lives. Next steps. Is this you, Kirsten?
Next 2 slides are you, Kenny, then I'll share about community engagement.
Okay, thanks. Right, I've done this before. Just back from a long holiday, you guys can tell. Okay, so here's a good timeline. We are in January, far left-hand side, and we are all gearing up to share our latest findings with the City Council on January 19th. You're getting kind of a sneak peek tonight. And our hope is that Council will say, keep going. Then the next 6 months are really critical, the winter, spring, and then into June. That's when we're going to be going farther with our design. Both buildings, there are 3 buildings, but kind of 2 sites. The 3 buildings are the new City Hall and Police Station, that's 1 building downtown, plus the parking structure, so there are 2 buildings. And then there would be a new Public Works building outside of downtown. And they are all right now at the very most conceptual levels of design. If we were to continue into the winter and spring, we would be developing those designs and including the public in some way to help us figure out what's the best way to use those sites, especially the downtown site. I don't know how much Public Works is going to have public involvement. And, you know, the building itself. We would come back to City Council in June, give them the final feasibility report on whether we were able to get community acceptance of the idea, maybe community excitement. That's where the Planning Commission might be able to be helpful. Because in June or July at the latest, the City Council would need to make the decision to put a general obligation bond for the project on the ballot in November. And believe it or not, that would have to be written and decided in August. And then we would continue on and hope for a positive vote in November. If we were to receive that, we would be targeting May of 22 to begin the Public Works construction project, and the summer of 23 to get Public Works off their site and start the City Hall Police Station project, with the hopes of moving into that new building downtown in the summer of 2025 and clearing off the existing City Hall campus so that could be turned over to a development team to begin building housing, including affordable housing, where we are targeting 30% of the 500 units. Okay, one more for me. Yeah, so you might have a little, some question marks about how that redevelopment would happen. We just zoomed in there on that part of the old drawing that shows our existing campus with buildings all over it. Just as a reminder, and street connectivity, to remind everybody that we do want to change up what we've got. So if the project's approved, this site would be subject to a master planning process. That would probably start in 2022 and last over a year, and it would be a very public process. We'd be asking you and the public for, I'm not sure exactly what, but you know, what are the goals for the site? Is the zoning and the height and the setbacks, is all that correct? Is it in the most developable condition? And are we on target with our affordable housing allocation? Because it's very important that the housing for future Tigard residents in downtown not all be so expensive that we only get one kind of person downtown. And that would be an exciting process, but that's the last part of our process, honestly. Like if we get that far, we're in good shape. But wanted to give you a preview of how that would all work. Okay, now it's Kirsten's turn to wrap us up.
Thanks so much, Kenny. And as you've heard, community voices will be really important in help shaping a solution that's the best fit for Tigard and fits your future vision. So I'll share a little bit about our activities to date, as well as upcoming opportunities to get engaged. So to inform our approach for the communications and engagement, we really focused first on research and early feedback. We held a series of kickoff meetings with the city staff and consultant team, as well as introductory interviews with staff and community stakeholders, as well as downtown business leaders and interests to help inform how best to talk about this project moving forward and what are the best ways to engage the community in the process. And so upcoming opportunities are beginning following the City Council meeting, really a range of ways to get engaged, including a community input questionnaire that's posted online at the Your Tigard engagement site, a project website with more information about the project as a whole, as well as upcoming opportunities, city communications updates through social media, podcasts, general media, and e-newsletter, and then continued direct outreach and briefings like the one we're providing today. Assumed in the near term, those will still be virtual pending COVID-19, but look forward to continued engagement and hearing from the broader community beginning later this month. And so with that, we'll turn it back over to all of you to hear your questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kirsten, Kenny, and Nadine, commissioners. All right, let me see. There are hands being raised. Commissioner K7, I see yours first. Go ahead.
Hi. Question I had is more of a clarifying question. The Public Works building, you said it will be moved away from downtown. Any idea on where it might be located? Just curious. That's more of a curiosity.
Well, you can look at your zoning map and look for the dark gray, which are the heavy industrial zones. There aren't that many of those around town, but in one of those sites is where it would end up.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right, Nate.
So mine follows on that a little bit. So some of the previous maps I think I've seen showed a site on the east side of Hall. I didn't know if that was a proposed Public Works site or for the City Hall site. Does that ring a bell?
Is that the question? So I think the short answer is no. A little bit longer answer would be that because I can't disclose too much about where the Public Works relocation site would be because that's still in negotiation. And but I can tell you that they started with they're working with a brokerage. They started with 100 possible sites. They narrowed it down to a top 5. And now they are trying to land a top 1. And like I said, they don't have it. So it's probably premature to talk about where exactly it's going to be. And actually the truth is I don't know. Even if I know which one they want, I don't know where they're going to end up. But I don't think east of Hall is in the top 5. I think I can say that.
Okay. Is the City Hall site also slated for an industrial zone, or
our current City Hall site?
The proposed or the potential site for the new City Hall?
No, so the new City Hall / police station building would occupy the site across the street from where we currently are, which is where the Public Works building actually is today.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Maybe we didn't make that clear. So the City Hall campus, which is, we say, south of Burnham, would get all the public uses, including the skate park, off of that land, and we would move that stuff across the street north of Burnham, where Public Works currently is. We would build, a new skate park, hopefully, a new City Hall and police station, and a parking structure. And then south of Burnham would all be available for mixed-use housing development.
Kind of what I was getting at was I was just making sure we're taking into account that if any of these moves are going to be on industrial zoned areas, that my understanding is industrial land is already at a premium. So I just wanted that to be in the conversation, I guess.
It absolutely, and in fact, you've just put your finger on maybe it's an Achilles heel in this whole scheme. Industrial land is both at a premium, expensive, and hard to find in Tigard, and we need about 8 acres for the Public Works operations to move on to. And I will just tell you, it is not easy to find it, and it's not going to be easy to actually acquire it. And that is the first domino that allows all of this other chain of dominoes to fall. So you've named something very important there that everybody needs to understand about the project, which is if we cannot find or secure a non-downtown site for our Public Works operations yard and buildings, we can't do the project.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Allie.
Hi. Oh, scared me on that one. So my first is a comment. I just want to say thank you for thinking about emergency planning as a city for someone who has experienced and been severely impacted by a natural disaster. Knowing that the city is planning and have thoughts to support their citizens beyond relying on FEMA is phenomenal. So thank you so much for that. Definitely needed, and I love hearing that. My question is unrelated. But my question goes towards the community building that was mentioned. And there was discussion of the LEED and the green certification. Again, love that. But now with COVID and enclosed spaces, are there any considerations for having like an open space where there's maybe a wall that can slide open for fresh air, or large windows that can be opened? How is that being taken into consideration? Because COVID is pretty rampant right now with enclosed spaces.
It is a really interesting time to be doing a project like this, and maybe Nadine has something to say about kind of just how we're thinking about our public facilities and keeping them and the public health. But Allie, I'm going to ask you, just if you wouldn't mind, to share was it an earthquake that you experienced? Because I don't think many people have that experience, and it is really nice to hear a little appreciation for the kind of planning that we're trying to do, because most people haven't had that. So do you mind sharing just a little more?
For sure. It was not an earthquake, it was a hurricane. So still pretty similar in terms of housing completely at a loss, items completely at a loss, having to flee. It's something that you don't expect, and having to not know where to go to within a city is difficult. So the fact that you're having kind of the strategic idea of like implementing city support is great. I will say that it was very difficult to get anything from the government, from FEMA. The plans and the procedures that they have in place is a very long and lengthy process. It takes a lot. And so when you don't have a place to go and you're trying to find internet, or you're trying to find a place to fax, it becomes very difficult. So yes, having that foresight is wonderful. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. And yes, emergency planning is part of this, including public health and COVID and pandemics. I mean, the one thing, so probably it's a little too early in our design process to give you an answer that is at the level that you're asking, which is like literally, are windows operable and how are we managing that? Generally, we think that things by 2025, we think that we're going to be post-pandemic, post-COVID. We are planning for work from home, so that the building could be a little smaller than what we otherwise would have thought, and the parking could be a little bit smaller than what we otherwise would have planned for. We're not sure that the effect of that is going to be as great as maybe we once did. Most people are anxious to get back to the office at least part or most time. But I feel like we have time, and maybe you and others in the community can help us with this whole design process to figure out, okay, if it's going to be LEED Gold, where do we want to make those investments? Do we have an opportunity for solar? Do we have an opportunity for net zero? Do we have an opportunity for operable windows? Is it COVID safe? Is it seismic safe? All of that. Nadine, do you have any other thoughts about how we're going to plan for public health in the buildings?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've really learned through this process is having your internal space flexible. And so what works in a normal environment, you need to be able to shrink that or expand it depending on what the event is and what kind of support you need to have in your office at the time. And so that's one thing that we've been talking with our consultants about, is just to make sure that we have that flexibility built into the buildings. And honestly, that means more partitions than probably hard walls to be able to accomplish that and to get that flexibility. It also allows us to change up our spaces as departments shift or change or grow. And so we're also looking at how we can use that flexibility to benefit in different ways.
Great. Awesome. Thank you.
We have one more, Darlene.
Yes, about the public works building and the industrial land use. Have you or did your committee consider like splitting the public works in half because of the boundaries of Tigard have grown immensely, referring to River Terrace area? So you have this huge area, and is it more feasible to do maybe 2 industrial zones for the public works? And then that would enable you to move forward with the project, because I have been through the police department several times. I was on the Levy and Bond Advisory Task Force. That place is a shack inside. It looks nice on the outside, but the inside is terrible. So it's essential we find really good placement for the public works in order to go forward.
Right. That issue, as Tigard has grown to the west, that issue is an issue not just for public works crews, but for our police patrols and honestly for our library and all the patrons who are trying to access the library. And if Tigard continues to grow, since that's where the land is, we are going to end up having satellite or secondary facilities that are farther west. I would say that we're not there yet. And actually, it is more difficult, believe it or not, it is split and do 2 projects instead of 1, especially industrial, because as you all know, we don't have industrial property really on that side of town. And the crews can still get around and do their cleaning and TVing and do all of the public works utility functions pretty well out of a downtown or an east side location. Honestly, they're under less pressure than the police patrols are when they have to respond to calls on that side of town. So we are looking about access in and out of the site for the police. Fortunately, I would say for the sake of this project, Tigard is still small enough that we can do okay out of single locations, and they can be downtown or on the east side or north side of the city. But the next folks who inherit these issues are going to have to figure out a way to do more, because we're just growing too fast.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for serving on that Levy and Bond Task Force. This project actually is, believe it or not, it's an outgrowth of the work that you did. We never got to the bond. That's what we're getting to now.
Yes, finally. Thank you.
All right, Jamie.
Hi, Jamie Watson. I was also on the Levy and Bond Task Force, and I'm really glad that that the city is moving forward with those efforts, and it sounds like there's been a lot of progress made. And I guess I would just, we just got through talking about how much Tigard is growing and the repercussions for these new facilities. And I would just like for you to speak to how you're planning the new facilities so that they can be expanded in place and continue to serve as the city moves forward.
Thanks for the question, Jamie, and for your service on both the Levy and Bond Task Force and on the commission. So we're working with an architecture firm, DLR Group. They are international, and they have a group that does just civic and municipal planning. We really struggled with how much space we should be, excess space we should be planning for the building. It's really tough because the building's expensive and we don't want to overbuild it. And our first projections, because we don't really know how to do this, ended up being very, very high. We were planning for a lot more space than we were told we would likely need. I think where we've landed now is assuming a growth rate of about, and this is in terms of our head count, about 1% per year over the next 20 years across all the departments. And that plus what Nadine talked about, which is the flexibility of spaces, seems to be about the sweet spot where we know we will be able to add staff without running out of room again anytime soon, and also begin to kind of, decommission spaces and recommission spaces to be able to use the space flexibly. And I should also point out, the spaces themselves, the workstations and the offices, are planned to be much smaller in this new building. So there's just a strong move toward efficiency and to take advantage of remote work. So I think all of those things give us comfort that we'll be able to grow into the building. And the parking structure, since we were talking about that earlier, the parking structure is sized for what we will ultimately need, but for the next 20 or 25 years, there will be spaces in that structure for the public to come and use.
Okay. And are you still, there was some talk about having a satellite police station elsewhere for greater response times, considering the traffic in Tigard. Is that sort of like a potential option for expanding in the future, at least for that department?
It's not an option that we're looking at as part of this project.
No, but just as
Right.
in terms of future.
Right. I get the sense from Chief McAlpine and from her folks, if we can get this new facility built, the police will feel very taken care of for a good while to come. And there will be such an upgrade. In fact, I should say, Nadine, help me with the numbers. I think that half of this new building would be police. It's about 100,000 square foot building as we envision it today. And it's about 50,000 feet for police. And I think police today are only in about, maybe like 15,000 feet?
Yeah, probably
Something like that.
altogether.
So there won't be a need anytime soon for a satellite police station. Like I said, if we get into the 2030s, we might be revisiting this.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have Asha.
Thank you. I wanted to say yay for thinking ahead about the parking structure being convertible to other uses at the end of its life. Would the police fleet be in the parking structure? Yeah, I see a yeah.
Some of it would. Some of it, again, we haven't really started the design yet, but the early review seems like some of that would be under the building, under the actual building. Again, I don't know my police operations well enough to know, but I think some of police operations want some of that fleet or police patrol cars and what they do to be away from the public parking structure. Sallyport, is that what it's called? So some of that might be under the building, but some of it would be in the structure.
Okay. And is there any consideration of making the building bigger and like renting it to somebody else? I mean, as a cost situation. I'm really concerned about the idea of, oh, it's all nice and tidy in the bond, but then we're going to raise your utility rates too. Like, you bring utility rates to the table again and people go bananas. So as a marketing sales tool, it's like, oh, it's all nice and tidy, but we're going to raise your utility rates again with another line item on the back of your bill. I really think it's, like a red flag for people. So just trying to put my comment in of like, whoa, don't do that. And I'd be willing to vote on a higher bond, but I understand same is easier to pass. But yes, I too was on the levy bond task force, so
now I can see where we found all of our new commissioners.
Definitely understand the situation with the police. And then my last question would be, if light rail comes back to town, I know there was some swap ideas about this particular piece of land and the city hall, and if that were to come back in the same route, how would this affect that situation? Thank you.
Okay, so thanks for the questions. I'll take them in order. We're not planning on building a bigger building and leasing a part of it because we can't afford to do it. It's just the building is already really stretching us, and we're just not able, I think, to stretch that far. Not to mention not having any real experience. I've been in buildings, public buildings with retail space. They're not always very attractive, and they're not always all that well desired. And so I think we're going to stay away from that. Frankly, the budget kind of keeps us away from that. If anything, I think the building may get smaller as we go forward, just as we kind of have to work to a budget. To the second question about utility rates, higher rates are necessary to be able to afford this project. Our finance director, Toby LaFrance, has shared with council in prior updates that they have the option to finance the project differently if they want to go for a tax increase through a general obligation bond that is more than what we're planning. That is certainly within their purview to do, and they could use those funds to cover the costs of the utilities. We don't recommend it. There's one reason for that in particular that's striking to me, which is that our utilities today they all go pretty much rent free, meaning that the rates that people pay in Tigard don't cover any of the costs to house the people and equipment who take care of those systems. They are in a way freeloading off of prior investments that were made by City of Tigard taxpayers. So we don't have space in the rate structure. And that's something that we need to get away from, because it is a legitimate cost that usually does get structured into utility rates. It's just going to be painful in making that transition. And we think now is the time to do it. But the council could make a different choice on that. And yes, it could be the thing that causes the council or the public to say no thank you to the project, because I know it's hard. Utility rates in Tigard are high. And then the last question about Southwest Corridor, once upon a time, we took this concept to TriMet and said, work with us here. We can get both of our projects done if you think a little differently about your alignment. And they said, no, thanks. So we kept going on our own, and they kept going on their own, and their project appears not to be happening, and we hope that our project will. I don't think there's any impact, actually, except to say that if the Southwest Corridor comes back anytime soon, it will only accelerate the development of the housing portion, and it may give us a few extra bucks when we go to sell the property, because the light rail station being so close by will be an asset. But in terms of the bigger story and the big concept, the Southwest Corridor happening or not happening is not really a factor, and TriMet's not a partner, even though we asked them to early on.
Right. Anything else? No? Okay. Ali and Jamie, your hands are still up. Do you have more questions, or you just... Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay. All right. So I think that's it. Okay. Kenny, Nadine, and Kirsten, thank you very much for your work on this important project. As you can see, we're made of diverse and very talented people, who are very eager to help you. So feel free to come back to us in the future if you need more input. Thank you again.
Thank you. It's wonderful being here, and
Thank you.
we really appreciate all of your time and attention on this, and we will come back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So we're about 20 minutes behind, but that's good. That means we're all very eager to give our input, and we're very interested in the topics. So next item is other business. So Planning Commission elections. We'll be electing our next president and vice president. So I see Tom is up, and so feel free to unfreeze your video feed and unmute yourself. This is time for a free discussion. And so what we usually do is we will nominate first commissioners for president, and you can nominate yourself or another commissioners, and then we'll vote on them, and after that we'll repeat the same for vice president. Any questions?
And Commissioner Alley, I nominate Commissioner Hu for president.
Oh, okay, thank you. I accept. Thank you very much. And any other nominations for president? Okay, I hear none. So, okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we have. So all those in favor of Commissioner Hu to be the next president, say aye.
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 Okay. Oh, opposed? Thank you, Aisha, for your support, but you're not a voting member, so I'm sorry.
That was my question.
Oh, okay, no problem.
Do I get to vote?
Well, I think five of our current voting members were alternates, so hang on longer and please apply in the future. So okay, so I guess I'm honored to be your next president. So thank you very much. And we'll repeat the same for vice president. Do we have a nomination? All right, Commissioner Watson.
I will nominate myself.
Okay, Commissioner Brooks.
Second.
Okay, but wait a second. I'm just waiting to see if anybody have other nominations.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No problem.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Jackson.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Brooks, do you have a non-nomination?
I was going to nominate Commissioner Jackson as well. So John beat me to it.
Oh,
okay. Commissioner Jackson, do you accept the nomination?
I do. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a contest going on. Exciting. So both are equally very talented. So do we have another nomination? Commissioner Dick, do you have a question?
I have a question. Can we nominate someone when we're alternates?
I don't think so, Tom. Is that
Darn, I was going to nominate Jamie anyway, but she did herself.
Oh, thank you, darling.
Okay, so we have two nominations. That's during term. So for Commissioner Watson, K7, are you second? Okay, second. So we have so all those in favor say, please raise your hand.
In favor of
Commissioner Watson.
Okay.
You can do it on the thing.
So we have some commissioner. Cole, are you on?
Hello, yes, I'm on.
Okay. Do you vote for Commissioner Watson or no?
My apologies. Yeah, my vote would be for Commissioner Jackson.
Okay, so we have two votes for Commissioner Watson. So do we have a second for Commissioner Jackson?
Somebody was going to second it.
Yeah, Commissioner Brooks, right?
So we've got two of us.
Yeah, I'll be second.
So those in favor of Commissioner Jackson, say aye.
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 Commissioner Ali and Commissioner Jackson, do you vote for yourself?
Sure.
So it looks like Commissioner Jackson will be our next vice president. Thank you. Congratulations.
Okay.
All right. That's all I have on my other business. Tom?
I don't have anything tonight, and we're going to meet again in just a couple of weeks. So, and given we're late, I think that's probably better. Sometimes I talk about upcoming cases or projects or whatever, but you've all got the rotating calendar, and you can see that things are starting to fill in pretty good now. So I think we can adjourn, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Doreen, anything else? No? Okay.
No, good job, you guys.
All right. Thank you so much. Good night. The meeting's
you.
adjourned. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.